Good evening, Lacrosse Leadership Institute. My name is Ryan Berns. I'm the president and founder of this amazing community. We're so grateful for this game of lacrosse. It plays such a big role in all of our lives. It's laid a foundation for us to accomplish our goals, be successful, and we want to make sure that everyone can live the lives that we want to live. Today, we're very fortunate for our guest, Brian, who's part of Signature Lacrosse. They're one of the fastest growing lacrosse brands that's out there right now, and we're extremely grateful and excited to hear his story. Brian, for starters, can you share a little bit about yourself, how you got into lacrosse, and let the community that we have here know about you?
Well, thank you, Ryan. We're very happy to be here on your show, and we love what you're doing for the sport. And thank you for even thinking of us. But how did I get involved in lacrosse? I didn't have much of a choice, to be honest. I was kind of born into it. My grandfather and my father and my uncles had all played. My grandfather was from Princeton, New Jersey, played at Springfield. And then after he graduated, he and a few of his teammates, actually, they left New Jersey and they ended up in Medford, Massachusetts, just outside of Boston. And he ended up being the coach at Tufts University, including their undefeated 1946 season when they probably should have been national champions. We didn't have a playoff back then. It was right after the war. So they awarded the championship to Navy, who Tufts had beaten that year, but it was right after the war. So it's all about patriotism. Then my father and his older brother obviously grew up playing, and there wasn't youth lacrosse back then. But, they grew up playing with, old sticks like this bad boy here. And my uncle ended up going to Dartmouth, playing three-time All-American there. And my dad went and played at Harvard, did pretty well. He was a three-time All-American as well, and had the Harvard scoring record for, I think, 50 years up to 2012. So by the time I was born, my brother was born, we didn't really have much of a choice. There were a bunch of sticks around the house, and we weren't sure what they were, but we'd go out and catch butterflies with them when we were small, and then start catching balls. And granddad and dad didn't talk too much about their past, so we didn't know that they were about their history till much later in life. But we grew up loving the game and playing catch. Instead of baseball in the backyard, we're throwing around lacrosse sticks. So I had a big head start. I grew up in New Hampshire, actually, which was not a big lacrosse area in the 70s and 80s. But when I got to high school, there was a team. And because I've been throwing around since I was 3 or 4 years old, had a bit of a jump start on other kids. So really got into it at that point. Anyway, that's the family history. And we're very, very fortunate and lucky to have gotten the start we did.
It's so neat that you have the family heritage, basically, of how it all started. You got your grandfather, your dad, all of your uncles being just huge success with the sport, and it seems like it's passed down to you and allowed you to follow your dreams. And obviously, it's still a part of your life, which is really, really cool to see. One of my favorite questions to ask everyone is, what is your pinnacle lacrosse moment?
Well, it is cool to see the family history, but my poor 10-year-old son is kind of being forced into it as well. I hope he really enjoys it. But, a pinnacle moment, I really appreciate you even presuming that I had a pinnacle moment as opposed to a series of valleys and abysses like I'm kind of in at my advanced age now. But I suppose in the 70s and 80s, it was pre-internet, and lacrosse didn't really have any TV coverage. And then not much newspaper coverage, depending on what area you're in. So I think you kind of find out about what was going on in the lacrosse world because the NCAA would send out probably a telex, I'm guessing, to all the coaches around the country. And they'd print out 3 pieces of paper and they'd stick them up on the bulletin board, either in the locker room or the athletic facility lobby. And that would tell you what teams were doing well, who was nationally ranked, who would beat who. And then they'd have now stats, like who was the best goalie save percentage, who had the most assists, who was leading the nation in scoring and stuff like that. And it was always the big guys, the Syracuse and Maryland and Hopkins, or in D3 it'd be Hobart. And I was playing in college out in the middle of nowhere, a bunch of cornfields in Ohio, at a place called Kenyon College. And it was fun because we were a tiny school, but we played teams like Notre Dame and Michigan State and Ohio State, Georgia Tech. And we usually beat those guys back then. They'd probably crush us now, but our biggest competition was like Denison and Ohio Wesleyan, maybe Western Maryland or Mount St. Mary's. But it was really fun, but we didn't get much press, obviously, being in the middle of cornfields. But I think maybe my sophomore year, we get those 3 pages of information up on the bulletin board, and all of a sudden my name popped up. A couple games into the season, and I was like number 8 in the country in scoring or something, which I thought was pretty cool. It wasn't exactly, news breaking, but it was a point of pride. And I know, the great Bill Belichick says stats are for losers, but as a college kid, it kind of stuck in my craw. Hey, I made something of myself, and then as the season went on, I started slowly climbing up higher up that list, and I think we had one game where we were playing a not so good team. I think it was Mountain Union, and they were a football powerhouse, but they weren't known for their lacrosse abilities. And I scored like 11 goals in the first half against them. The coach usually let the starters start, and in the second half, the other guys would play if we were winning by a bunch. He didn't really pull me out in time, so he was pretty embarrassed about it after the game. And that was like no one ever scored 11 goals, I guess. And they had Sports Illustrated and Sporting News showing up, and a couple little tiny articles and this stuff. And that put me up to number 1 in the country for scoring, even though our team was not that great. We had a bunch of good players. And the players in the team, they saw, hey, Brian's on this list. He must be good. Let's feed him the ball all the time. So I kept getting more passes, and I was a crease attackman. I guess that'd be my pinnacle. It was pretty fun. So, I finished the season the highest score in the country. Obviously not as good as a bunch of the other players out there playing for the big schools, but it was it was a nice little memory to have. So that would be the pinnacle. Since then, now I'm playing in the old man leagues in Lake Placid and Weston, and the divisions I'm in are ultra grand masters. So I really should be in a wheelchair probably. If I were, I'd have been made into glue long ago. But lacrosse gets in your blood, and you still stay out there and play.
Oh, it's so great. I think that is true from everything that we've seen. It gets in your blood. You keep playing, even if you are in a wheelchair in the ultra grand masters.
Hey, it's ultra grand match. It's like real lacrosse, only in slow motion. It's.
Well, it's great that there's the opportunity to do that as well with some of these tournaments. I know that's something where we haven't seen a whole lot of that on the West Coast, or at least with the tournaments that I've been. We're mainly in the Open right now, starting to look at the Masters since we're getting there. But it's really cool for me to be able to look into the future and say, hey, I can keep playing as long as my body will let me.
Looking at you, Ryan, you have a lot of years left before it gets to that time of your life to worry about it.
I guess that's a fair thing to say, Brian. And one of the other things I want to say is just recognizing your pinnacle. You had an opportunity and you took it and you executed. I think that's a big thing that we see with leaders at the end of the day. They know that they need to accomplish some sort of goal in a lacrosse game that's scoring more goals than the opponent. Your team recognized you as someone who could do that. They gave you that opportunity, you executed, and it turns out that the pinnacle or the notoriety is just a result of the hard work and the activity that you're putting in, which is really, at the end of the day, one of those skills that you gain from lacrosse that you don't necessarily recognize right away. One of the other skills that you get is leadership. So Brian, I'd like to ask you, what does leadership mean to you?
Well, I mean, leadership's obviously one of besides being the point of this whole interview, is one of the most important things in life. And I generally try and break leadership down into 2 categories, Ryan, sort of on a micro and a macro level. Micro obviously being on an internal level to your own organization, whether it's a team, or a company, or a program you're running, or even down to the family unit level. And on that micro level, I think leadership is really, it's all about leading by example. You're the first in, you're the last to leave. You're willing to do the dirty work. You're willing to help everyone else that's on the team, for example. It's obviously a lot more to leadership. that alone, the ability to inspire people or to motivate people are critical. But I would still say that leading by example is most important. And I say that just because, you can mention motivation and inspirational abilities, but not everyone necessarily has the charisma or the personality or the people skills to lead in that fashion. But every single person in the world, really, every person watching this, every person that plays a sport or works for a living, does have the ability to lead by example. Even if your abilities might not be up with other people on the team, if you can outwork people, you can just do what you're supposed to do and set an example that way. And that makes you a leader. And I think that's important for everyone to know. And no matter what your talents are, you still should be the hardest working person out there, or the hardest working person you can be. So that's my take on leadership on the micro level. But then when we get to a macro level, it's not really so personal, I guess, but that's where it really gets fun for me, and where organizations can have a really big impact on whatever they're involved in. When you have an entire organization trying to be a leader in a certain field, great things can happen. I mean, historically, you have, let's say, Ford Motors, that they pioneered the assembly line, which in turn led to automobiles being mass marketed and affordable to everyone, plus their employers getting higher wages than everybody else out there. That changed the world. You can go to Microsoft or Apple, with Gates and Jobs. They obviously pioneered the computer industry, and then that's affected the world in ways that are still evolving. In the sports, maybe Nike with their high performance shoes, and Tesla may be doing the same thing with, electric vehicles in space. So these companies, for the most part, they led revolutions, in their areas. Their products became widely used and more popular and affected everyone's life, basically. And at Signature Lacrosse, this lacrosse head with a flamingo in it, we're trying to do something similar in our sport, in lacrosse. And that's a lofty goal. We're not trying to compare ourselves with these giant corporations of the past, but we are trying to make a mark in lacrosse. We have a company mission statement, which I don't mean to sound pretentious, but I think most companies in this day and age do have a mission statement just to try and keep you focused and on track to where you want to go. And oh boy, our mission statement's changed a few times over the years as we try and tweak it. But I believe it's our mission is to grow the game through problem-solving products and services. Made for the players, and it's made by the players, because everyone over here is a player or a coach or has been a player, whether they're pro or college or amateur, or people who run youth programs, on up. So our focus and everything our thought processes are all about what can we do to make lacrosse better. And there's a lot of ways that can be done, I guess. But basically, every product or service that we launch or come out with, in our minds, it must be an improvement on what's already available. Okay, and ideally it should be revolutionary, but we're not a bunch of Einsteins over here, so not every product is world changing. But we do try to make sure it's an improvement on what else is available, and we'll change the game for the better. So, I mean, like you mentioned, we started with balls, and that in the old days, balls sometimes would be hard as a rock, sometimes they'd be soft and go through a face mask. That's because they're all made of natural rubber. But how you cure that rubber, how you produce them, how long they're in the molds, what the materials in the rubber are, because you add oil to vulcanize it to make sure the rubber stays together, and the production methodology as well as the materials kind of infect how that ball is. So that's why you had some that were hard as a rock and some were soft. And the powers that be, the regulations that control that, didn't really have a standard. They had plus or minus 50 pounds of pressure to bring it down 25%. So that's why you had soft ones, which were dangerous for eyeballs, especially in box, and hard ones that just hurt. So Danny Soviero, the founder of the company, he got a rubber chemist involved, and I think he got pinged by a ball that hurt him too much one time. And he just said, hey, it's got to be a better way to make a better ball. And he got it down to where we can come down to plus or minus 2 pounds of for consistency. So, I mean, I don't know if you ever played wall ball as a kid and you have a ball and you hit the same brick every time, no question. They need a different ball and you're throwing 2 bricks high or 2 bricks low. That's because the balls weren't consistent. So we basically solved that, and we got, the NCAA and the other powers sort of had to say, okay, this is a safer ball. It's more consistent. We'll have to bring the standards down, which didn't make us some friends in certain places that were pretty established, but we think it was for the better of the sport. And constantly trying to improve that formula, but that's a ball's a ball kind of thing. We think ours are the best, but we're just happy that things are safer. We moved on to sticks, say for example, not that bad boy, but I mean, I grew up playing with the old Indian heads or wooden heads, and it's been fun to see the progression over the years with the offsets and the different technologies and stuff. But lacrosse sticks are kind of expensive. And we saw that as a lot of families just getting started in the game, they might fear the cost of joining. You get your helmet, which is a few $100. You got your pads if you're in boys lacrosse. And if kids are breaking 2 or 3 sticks a year, that adds up. So we came out and we offered the first lifetime warranty on lacrosse heads. So just to try and encourage more parents not to fear the financial impact of getting their kids involved. And it wasn't that hard to do. I mean, I spent 30 years in Asia, sourcing for everyone from, Nike, Under Armour, Callaway Golf, Siemens, Google, Apple, and a bunch of tech firms. So I had a pretty good grasp on what factories make what materials. So we just found a better quality material. We got some great designers in who just designed a little bit better head as far as strength goes. And we kept the weight down to one of the lighter ones in the game. But it just seemed, it's not more profitable for us to offer a lifetime warranty, but we thought it would be better just to grow the game, get more kids playing, and increase customer confidence in the products we're bringing out. So that was a little bit revolutionary with the warranty. What did we come out with after that? Oh, our goals. I don't know if you've seen our goal systems. We have the quick connect. Instead of having to spend 2 hours stringing up a net or a replacement net, it screws right into the pipes. It takes 10 minutes. Maybe out where you live is not too much snow. You don't really mind it. But, I grew up every March in New England. There'd be 5 inches of snow on the ground. Coach would tell you to string up a net if you'd misbehaved. And be out there. You can't wear gloves and your hands. It was just miserable. So this was, we didn't invent the screw. So I don't know why no one thought of this sooner. But we thought that was a very good improvement. Our one problem we did notice on first-year players or new players, a lot of kids will come out and they had a stick which wasn't strung properly, or maybe it was a toy stick. And the kids would be getting frustrated because they were throwing it straight up or they couldn't catch, or they were throwing it down on the ground. And as a coach, we have to spend 20, 30 minutes of practice restringing some kid's head. And we'd rather be coaching. So our junior stick line, we came out, it's pro strung, they're all identical, ready to go right out of the box. Also with a lifetime warranty. And those are most of the product innovations. But probably the biggest impact I think we'll have long-term, we launched a service. It's a Signature Partner Program. And it's geared primarily toward youth lacrosse programs. And youth programs across the country, and probably in almost every sport, but especially in lacrosse because it's a niche sport, typically you've had a parent whose kids play or want their kids to play. They start up a youth program. They're full of energy. They're focused. They're motivated. They go out there and they set up this program, and it grows. And they get up to 100 kids, maybe 200 kids, and they run it and they deal with all the headaches. They have to organize the list of who's playing, what size uniform they want. Making sure they have this insurance or that insurance and everything else is all set. And it's an administrative nightmare for the guy running it, but he or the woman running it, but they volunteered and they usually set it up and run it pretty well. Then they have to order uniforms. They get all the sizes. They measure the kids themselves, or they get the information from the parents. They order the uniforms, which take usually 2 months from overseas to arrive. if it's the wrong size, they got headaches with, mom and dad complaining, or little junior's shirt just dropping off his body, or if little junior grew 5 inches since the measurement, what do you do? It's kind of stuck. So I've got a garage full of hundreds of old uniforms probably that, weren't passed out, or now my wife would like to park a car in the garage at some point in our lifetime. And we might get there at some point. But we set up a signature partner program, which instead of the coaches or the administrators taking over the headache of doing this, the parent orders it directly from us. It's made in the USA. We ship it right to their door. If the child grew 5 inches, or if mom or dad ordered the wrong size, we replace it in a few days, no questions asked, no extra charge. And especially during COVID, because you never know how many kids are going to sign up, or what's going to change between registration and actual play date. Or so it's kind of a financial risk for organizations to buy 300 uniforms if only 50 kids are going to play, or if the season's canceled and everyone wants their money back. So this very much limits the financial risk for organizations. And the guy who started the program years ago, his kid's going to graduate eventually, and they quit. Another parent takes it over. Maybe they do a great job, but eventually down the line, somebody's going to lose interest. And the programs, lose players, lose organization, and they fold. So we just wanted to take all of those headaches away from the program, and we take it off. And there's no charge for it. We actually pay money back to the organization in case they need scholarships. We get sticks out to first-year players for free. But whatever we can to help lacrosse grow at a grassroots level in those local organizations. So sorry, this leadership conversation took a twist. I apologize for the shameless plug, but we are really proud of our products and services here at Signature. So,
Brian, rightly so. Everything's amazing. And I love how you talk about revolutionary right at the start, talking about Ford all the way to Tesla today. And I think you guys are revolutionary. You've changed consistency of the balls, lifetime warranties, which that was probably my biggest concern as a youth player. I hated wasting my parents' money. I always thought it was cool when I broke a stick, because I thought, oh man, I really laid it down. But then I take it to mom and dad, and they go, well, Ryan, how are we going to pay for this? How are you going to pay for this? And then it starts to get the wheels turning. And obviously, I wish I could have some sort of business that was lacrosse related. And I think that's where the entrepreneurial spirit got started. But it's something that you guys have totally changed the game with that, and also be able to empower communities to have programs. That's so cool, and something that I wasn't aware of either. So I appreciate you sharing that, and plugs and all that. That's what we need, is more leaders like you guys out here. One thing that I do want to ask you though is, thinking back in my youth, I always thought, man, it would be so cool to have a lacrosse business. How do I do that? And lo and behold, I kind of got like a podcast going that's a nonprofit. And so this is my way of doing it. But if you were to give advice to anyone who wants to be starting a lacrosse business, or a business in their youth, high school, college age, what type of advice do you have for that individual?
Well, I think when you start any business, you better be prepared to put in a lot of work. All right, and plan carefully and think things through. The lacrosse industry, it's not really a money pit. We're a for-profit company, but we didn't really get into it, for the money. There are much easier business models to tackle, I would think, especially if you want to keep giving back to the game. I mean, I know there are organizations that do quite well financially with it. We try and stay afloat. We have responsibilities to our shareholders as well as our families and whatnot. But I make a lot less in lacrosse than I did in my previous career, but I enjoy it so much more. But as far as advice, if you want to get into it, think of ways you can help the sport. I think if you find a way to make an impact and improve the sport in some way, business will just follow. And it's kind of a field of dreams approach to it, I suppose. Build it and it will come. It doesn't always work, because you have to have certain other factors fall in place for you. But if you have a good quality product, you care about your customers, and you care about what you're doing, you will be successful as long as you keep working at it.
Awesome. Brian, thanks for that thought. Right now, what are you focused on, and how can our community help you out with that focus?
Well, focus is kind of scattered at the moment personally, because we're working 16-hour days, and I handle the sales and the sourcing side of the business. So I'm on the phone 8 in the morning till 8 at night usually, talking to program directors and coaches around the country and the world, seeing how we can help out, seeing what they need, seeing what we can facilitate for them. I think there's a lot more lacrosse-related emergencies than you would normally think. But someone's always calling up with an issue and needs last-minute help. But our focus right now is actually on that Signature Partner Program, I think, making sure we can get as many programs signed up so that they're not at risk from COVID signups, that they do get uniforms and team spirit stores. We have team stores as well that are open year-round. I don't know. I have my pet peeves. My 10-year-old son was playing for a program. They'd have a team store which went up for 2 weeks every year. So they say, hey, get your merchandise here, and maybe 10% of the parents would order it. I was the guy who missed the email half the time too. Then I see, Mr. Jones next door. Whoa, great hoodie. Where do you get one of those? Well, wait till next season when the 2-week window pops up again. So as part of our uniform service, we have a team store concept. It's open 365, 24/7. And that's really fun because you go to a tournament and you see there was a 100-team tournament in Orlando like last month. And I think 10 of the teams were in our partner program. You can just look at the teams on the sidelines and tell who was a member, because every parent and brother and sister and friend was decked out in something. Whereas most of the teams would just have one guy in a t-shirt from this year, a guy in a hoodie from 2 years ago, and a guy in a hat. And it doesn't make the teams play any better, to be honest, but they look a lot better, which the kids get psyched for. And I think if you have all that spirit wear out in the community, it does help grow the sport. And they wear them to school, more kids are like, oh, I want to play for that team. And again, back to the mission of growing the sport. So we're very focused on that and seeing how many teams we can get enrolled and help out.
Oh, well, you guys are making a huge impact, and there's a reason why the community's picking it up and loving it. I mean, you guys are doing a great job marketing and making it out this way. So props to you there. One last question for you, because I know we're approaching the time for this. You mentioned in your mission that you're about solving problems and you're problem solvers. You're on the marketing sales side of this. What is either the most interesting problem you've solved for a team, or what's the most difficult? Do you have an example that you could share a little bit more about a problem that you solved that you're proud of?
Oh, well, that's back into this partnership program. I won't name the specific team, but there was one of the leading programs up in the Northeast, with 500 plus players, a very well-respected travel team. And the guy who ran it, it's an old friend of mine, used to play against each other back in the day. And he's like, the biggest nightmare we have is just dealing with the parents and dealing with this uniform and the team store stuff. And I said, well, I'll take it off your hands. He's like, well, how much are you charging me? I'm like, nothing. We'll even give you money back. A percentage of all revenues from the team store and the uniform sales go back to your program so you can give scholarships to people. And the owner of the program was pretty happy and it signed right up. But his right-hand person was a wonderful lady and an accountant by trade. And she'd spend 100 hours a year just doing this administrative stuff with spreadsheets and going back and fielding parent complaints. And she sent me a giant box of Dunkin' Donuts, because that's what we ate growing up in New England. And mailed them down here to Florida, even though they had Dunkin' Donuts here. Probably didn't know that. I thought it was a Northeast thing. But just like, she was just so happy and excited. You can't believe how many years you've added to my life. And that's the kind of thing. At problem solving, when we were the official ball of the World Games in Israel, that we had sent over, I think, 20,000 lacrosse balls to them. They were there, they had selected the color. They wanted orange because that's what they wanted. That's what showed up best on the NLL games and the MLL games in the US. But the fields were a bit different in Israel. So when they got there and ESPN was televised, they realized, oh no, on the one center field, this orange doesn't show up too well on camera. It's not very digitally visible. Can you get us white balls? And it's kind of hard to get a whole bunch of balls over to Israel when it's 12 hours till the next game. So we actually had someone from our company drive down to Miami, with 10 cases of balls, hop on an airplane, show up in Israeli customs. I mean, Madeline Lewis from our company, God bless her heart. She showed up, this petite young lady with a giant smile and just dragging these bags of lacrosse balls, you know, through the airport. And Israeli customs which are fairly strict. They didn't know what they were. You know, they could have been plastic explosive or something. It's because they'd never seen a lacrosse ball in their life. And but we got them there, and the games went off without a hitch after that.
Oh, wow. That's such a cool story as well, Brian. Thanks for your time this evening. We all really appreciate what you're up to, what your whole Signature Lacrosse brand is up to. It's absolutely amazing. I'm excited to see what else you guys do. Do you have any last thoughts, Brian?
I do not. I just want to thank you so much for your time.